everyone. Welcome back to Hybrid Edge Innovation Day. So excited to be here. My name is Adrian San Miguel. I'm a principal partner, enterprise architect here with AWS, and joined by a good colleague of mine, Jeff. Say hey, Jeff.
Adrian, thanks. My name is Jeff Marushek. I am a senior solutions architect on our DoD Air Force team, and the real guest, the real special person, is Rich to talk about some multi-cloud activities. Rich, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Rich McDonough. I'm a principal technologist with AWS. I've been here for a little over 5 years. So true story, I actually used to help companies move into the cloud before coming here.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah.
I like to call myself unreasonably passionate about automation and operations.
No, that really just means you're lazy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I firmly believe a good sysadmin is a lazy sysadmin, but you got to be the right kind of lazy. So much so that I basically, I spent many years trying to almost automate myself out of a job. I've never quite succeeded. I just keep spending my time working on more and more interesting problems.
Yeah, see that? Yeah. We harkening back to the data center days, we always tried to find a way to get out of doing the things you automate it, and then corner case, you got to go through and do it again and again. Yep. Curious of how that kind of helped spawn your frame of thoughts and some of the projects that you've been working on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So a lot of what I've been working on is very focused on customer automation at the edge. Okay. A lot of runbook automation, automated remediation. And that's actually kind of leads directly into what I wanted to show next. So we love highlighting customer successes. And speaking of automation, I want to hear from a customer of ours who has produced fantastic results. This is Rackspace. And let's hear from them. Let's have their own words on how they've used our solutions to help automate their environment.
Sounds good.
My name is Mike Limbert, and I lead product development for our public cloud solutions and services here at Rackspace Technology.
Fantastic. And my name is Travis Renty, and I'm the CTO for the public cloud business unit at Rackspace. Yeah, so Rackspace helps organizations across over 120 countries adopt modern technologies. This includes management and optimization. At a high level, we specialize in creating solutions for hybrid and multi-cloud environments. Accompanying this, say, breadth and the scale of infrastructure comes the challenge to automate management across cloud providers and really span instance patching across multi-cloud and these hybrid cloud environments. So we established a solution we call the VM management, ultimately to solution and support Rackspace in managing customers' virtual machines across AWS and other cloud platforms. It runs on AWS Systems Manager, which supports managing servers across AWS, as well as user on-prem infrastructure as well through a common single interface. Using AWS's Systems Manager to support VM management, Rackspace was able to transform its core offerings from a manual, resource-intensive process to highly scalable, automated, and simple, really, to make sure we were able to reduce our costs and deliver more value to our customers as well.
Yeah, so this challenge was really a priority to solve because as a managed service provider, we need to be constantly exploring ways to be more efficient at delivering services to our customers, really to improve issue resolution times and system availability. And many times our answer lies in improving automation in delivery of our services. And so you can imagine that manually managing hundreds of thousands of compute instances across multi-cloud and hybrid environments is really a tremendous challenge, and not to mention one that can become very expensive quickly. In many cases, admins must use protocols like Secure Shell or Remote Desktop Protocol really to connect to each instance or VM on a scheduled basis to perform things like patching, maintenance, or upgrades. Something as minor as applying an update can take hours, which really comes at the expense of our customers. And so these manual processes are really also very error prone and can result in accidental misconfiguration. Additionally, resolving monitoring alerts in a timely fashion is really incredibly important and a challenge to do well without automation. So all these issues combine to increase risks to a company's security and operational health. And these risks are then accelerated as we try to scale to meet demand from our customers. For example, if we detected a security vulnerability on a customer system or a customer requested a patching activity, a Rackspace employee then had to log into the customer's infrastructure, investigate and troubleshoot the issue, and then perform manual patching. So having humans doing that one by one on a large scale really isn't sustainable. Yeah, so we decided to solve this challenge by building a solution on AWS. We leveraged the incredible capabilities of AWS Systems Manager and integrated with the observability functions of AWS CloudWatch to build an end-to-end solution for both public and private clouds that we call VM management. So with VM management, we can automatically patch fleets of VMs with tremendous flexibility. We have also integrated this solution into our smart ticket service, which performs automated alert remediation and ticket enrichment by gathering data in response to a monitoring event. SSM was really the only realistic technology to use as our backbone because of its flexibility to run shell scripts on individual VMs and do advanced orchestration.
Ultimately, we found scalability on AWS Systems Manager to be the most natural fit, in a decision that was actually ultimately reinforced by the strength of our partnership that we do have with AWS. Using AWS Systems Manager to support VM management and several other of its managed services, Rackspace was able to transform its core offerings from manual, resource intensive, to a highly scalable, automated, simple solution that ultimately reduce costs for our customers. Yeah, so it really improves security through automation, ensuring that we don't have vulnerable systems at risk. Also, by automating this work, 70% of our manual remediation tasks are now fully automated through a system that we call smart tickets. Ultimately, this enables us to patch or manage our fleet at scale. Ultimately, each of these helps reduce cost aligned to running the business, creating space for us to establish additional value, customer value on more meaningful tasks. So we don't want to be just keeping the lights on, right? We want to identify and deliver new value continuously for our customers. And this creates space to allow that. I'd say last but not least, this reduces the infrastructure complexity for Rackspace and for our customers. And who doesn't love simplicity and elegance in a design? So with that, I want to thank everybody for their time and highly encourage you all to check out the link below outlining our journey, as well as how Rackspace and AWS can help you implement this solution to help you operate and manage your hybrid or multi-cloud environments.
That's an awesome story, and good friends over at Rackspace. Travis, I remember working with him back in the day in helping develop and figure out art of possible what it is that we can do to go beyond the old way and start leveraging services like SSM, as he mentioned, as that critical backbone. Yeah. So, question for you, and I'm sure many of our viewers are wondering about it. How we manage operations everywhere using AWS tools. Can doing so give a consistent user experience, or is it just going to be like one of those kind of like a corner case, almost like a platypus, where it's so unique that you're unable to like actually replicate it and do it again and do it again? Or is Rackspace proving to us that that consistency was a goal and is really a target that other folks can strive to obtain? Because I could see how that's vital to the customer experience if they were able to do it, manage it, and scale it.
It's a fantastic question. I think Rackspace is a great example of something that is, in many ways, aspirational and also fully achievable. I actually want to show the first slide for just a moment, if we can.
Yeah, looked good.
All right, so what you see here, it's just a high-level diagram of some of the components of Systems Manager that Rackspace and others have built into their architecture. So we'll have VPCs running in AWS over on the right-hand side, and we'll get to some of those services in a few minutes. But down at the bottom, you're going to see that you can integrate with Systems Manager directly into other cloud providers or your own on-premises environments, and even into IoT devices. And I know that there was a lot of IoT discussion earlier today.
Yeah, I think in this slide, the scale is not there because those 3 bottom boxes can be huge.
They are definitely not to scale. Objects in the mirror are definitely different size than you're seeing.
Yeah, you just mentioned IoT, and then something just clicks in the brain like, wait a minute, we can actually do this with IoT?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. So deployments to edge devices, management of edge devices, it's definitely one of the strong suits of Systems Manager. And that's just one of the things that we're going to talk about here. So if we can pull down the slide, I think now might be a time to actually talk a little bit about how we actually accomplish this.
Okay.
So first off, from a server perspective, so this could be a bare metal machine. It could be a VM running in another on-prem environment or in another cloud. It doesn't really matter. If it runs on Windows or Linux, or even on edge devices that are very resource constrained, you can install the Systems Manager agent, and you can remotely manage and perform operations and automation on that node.
Well, I think that's a key point to hammer home because I think for the most part, when people first learn about SSM, it's when they're learning AWS and they're spinning up an EC2 instance that's probably Amazon Linux 2 or Amazon Linux 23, and they can just run the SSM commands there. But that's because that agent is already baked into the AMI. So that being said is cool, but what you said is even more important is that outside of that EC2 instance, your VMware VMs, your Raspberry Pis that you might be showing us here in a little bit, anything can have Windows, Linux, for the most part, anything. Try not to speak in absolutes, but can be managed with SSM. I think that's important for everyone to realize.
That is very true. And coming back to the Systems Manager control plane and data plane side of it, the agent is just part of the solution. The other half is Systems Manager itself, which runs in AWS and is built with the same durability and reliability of other services that operate inside of Amazon Web Services. So this coupling of the agent together with the cloud-based service, it really provides enormous benefits for our customers. In fact, as of right now, we have more than 20 million concurrent instances, VMs, bare metal, everything that are managed by Systems Manager.
That's ridiculous. I knew it was widely adopted, but I didn't think it was to that scale.
It is.
Wow. So let's get to it. If I was a customer wanting to tinker around and start going down this path to avoid what Jeff was mentioning about, hey, we're going to sit at the keyboard the old-fashioned way, we're going to clock it out, we're going to let old habits die hard and bring up cluster SSH and redirect X. If I don't want to do that, how can I get started?
All right. So I hope that we're showing the my desktop right now. Fantastic.
Cool. All right. This looks familiar.
Yeah. So Systems Manager, very familiar. I'm first actually going to head over to, scroll down to where it says Hybrid Activations.
Okay.
So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create this hybrid activation, which is essentially, it's like a token or a password that's used to attach a remote virtual machine or server to Systems Manager. And again, bare metal, on-prem, it doesn't really matter. So we'll create a new activation.
Another cloud provider.
Could be another cloud provider. Yep. Absolutely.
Public cloud, private cloud.
Any cloud?
Yeah, any cloud.
Platypus cloud.
Platypus cloud, absolutely.
Okay. So we always come back to the monodreams, I swear.
So from here, very crucially, we're going to select a role that the Systems Manager agent on this remote server is going to assume. At this point, in many ways, it might as well be inside of EC2, exactly as you were describing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Here, I'll go ahead.
And this way, with this role, we can fine-grain determine what that machine or what that agent is able to do.
That's 100% correct.
That might be a particular interest for customers that operate in sensitive environments, that they only want, hey, we only want the APM to come out. We only want explicit logging in X directory, or we're going to just tail the log, and if something comes out, we want to know about it. Is that about right?
That's exactly it. In fact, we're going to show that in a second with access to logs that are KMS encrypted.
Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, maybe we should just give it just a full root access. Do you think that's smart?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Aw.
All right.
Definitely not. However, full disclosure, you're about to see me be root in my terminal here. Please don't judge me.
No judgment.
Yes, do as I say, not as I do, as I like to say.
That's not why I asked that question, so I apologize if
No,
I set you up there.
it is completely okay. Demo purposes. So, what happened here, I've actually re-registered this VM. It was previously registered, hence an error, but it has been successfly registered as a part
Looks
of
like you
SSM.
just kind of piped in the word yes to
I literally did.
yeah, to SSM agent or dash register. You echoed yes into that with a code, an ID, and a region.
Yep.
We got that error because, like you said, you had already registered, but this is
This is a new
yeah.
registration. now,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
So now, if we have a look at the logs,
Mhm.
we're going to start to see some errors, and that is okay. So what's happening is, at this point in time, errors notwithstanding, of course, it would have already run through the complete inventory of the server. It's collated all of the packages that are installed on it. We can review the server inventory in a few minutes, and it's going to tell us things like the patch state of the server.
Yeah, that's particular interest. Selfishly, as many folks may know, many of us on the AWS on other segments in our speakers, we're specialists in a variety of different domains. And me personally, and it's something I talked to Jeff about, and I believe I may have mentioned it to Rich at some point, roughly about 80% of the specialist requests that I get in the Cloud Ops domain are specific to SSM. And hey, how can I get those patch compliance reports? How do I know what patched when and what's missing? Because we don't patch on Patch Tuesday. We don't patch over the weekends. So it sounds to me like this might be able to scratch that itch in a very definitive way.
That is absolutely true. So what I failed to do here was actually restart the agent after.
There we go.
Yes. This is
Way to fill in for him, Adrian. That was
yeah, I
awesome.
appreciate that.
So
Yeah.
what machine are we
There we go.
talking to here?
So this here is it's a VM that's running over at another cloud provider.
Okay.
Oh, it's running Ubuntu. Now it is successfully doing its full inventory. There's going to be a lot of log messages here that I don't expect anybody, including me, to be able to possibly read this fast.
Is this the console on your laptop, or are we in like IDE or something?
No, this is just terminal. I've actually just SSH'd into this.
Okay,
this node
perfect.
remotely.
Perfect.
So now if we pop over into Fleet Manager, we're going to see right here this new node that has just appeared. So this is the one that we just registered. So Ubuntu has the version. It's still performing the indexing, so we're not going to do a great deal of digging into this quite yet. We'll come back to it, though.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to show quickly some of the other tools that you can run against nodes that operate inside of Systems Manager. So, for example, if I have a look at, let's say, I'll pick on this Ubuntu host here. So this as well. Oh, by the way, there's a little bit of a clue here to see what's running in AWS and what's not.
Okay.
Anything that's called a managed instance in this column, those are hybrid activated instances.
Okay. That's good.
Every one of those could be anywhere in the world.
That is an awesome pro tip.
So from here, we can do all kinds of neat things, like we can view the file system. We can tail logs in real time. We can view performance counters.
So you're telling me we don't have to log in, we don't have to echo, we don't have to go parse CloudTrail, we can just come and do it here.
We don't need to procure a Bastion host.
Oh,
We don't need to open up 443 or SSH protocols. None of that.
That is completely correct.
Well, I mean, the SSM agent needs some sort of pathway, right?
It does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first connect to this server, and then I'll talk you through what's happening under the hood.
okay. Yeah, be awesome.
So I'm now on this box. I can run top. I happen to be running as the SSM user, as the user ID on the system.
Okay.
You can configure that yourself, of course. But what's really going on under the hood is the SSM agent has created a WebSocket connection back to the Systems Manager data plane inside of AWS. Now, there's no SSH port open on this box.
No.
No SSH. The only connection is initiated from the server outbound to the Systems Manager data plane, where you can then interact with it through that WebSocket.
Wow.
So no need for Bastion host. As you said, no need to open up ports and do anything crazy. You've already immediately reduced your attack surface,
Mm-hmm.
and you've created a pipeline for automation to run through the agent.
And that configuration you just talked about, that's somewhat typical for a machine to reach out and grab like a yum update or something. It's typically all right to allow that outbound access and then to allow a response on an ephemeral port. So it sounds like SSM is doing the same type of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're not limited to Linux here, by the way. So I am going to connect to a Windows host.
So no more 3389 is what I'm understanding.
That's it exactly.
And we're logging in without MFA.
Again, demo, please, do as I say, not as I do.
No. See the opportunity to jump in. But yeah, I guess that would be a good call out for anybody watching. Yeah, you could absolutely wrap it in MFA and continue to embrace security best practices as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So here I'm even on a Windows host. So we're rendering the RDP protocol, but it's being pulled through, again, WebSocket connection through Systems Manager. And here I'm able to interact with this system remotely.
So it is actually using the RDP protocol, not something like nice DCV or something like that. It's
No.
Okay, cool. So like you wouldn't want to do some modeling high-end graphic stuff through this.
Probably not. Okay. This is definitely for system administration
right,
tasks. I wouldn't run like SolidWorks to this kind of interface.
Yeah, so it's not a replacement for workspaces or something like that.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah, this seems to me to be the point in time. Oh, I need to jump in there. I need to see if there's a binary there. Hey, is there a delta? Hey, am I mounted? Hey, something happened with the application. Yeah. Just the quick you get in there, don't launch a bastion. I need to answer a question pretty quickly.
That's it exactly.
Even if it's like a lot of times it's a networking configuration.
It's always a network.
Yeah, so like you need to change the IP address or something, and that is allowing that access to do that through the GUI. So that's great.
So one of the awesome things about System Manager is it's built on this idea of being able to run remote commands on your servers and enforcing state. So I think that's probably a good segue to talk a little bit about patching.
Yeah, please. Enforcing state and making sure that folks go to sleep and they wake up, it's in the exact place that folks left it in outside of like a patch window or some sort of change control suite. How do we go about doing that? And I guess Patch Manager is going to be a big part of that.
Well, yeah, you've been showing us some cool things to do. So let's talk about what the operations folks actually have to do, that life cycle. Show us how SSM can help with that.
Oh, yeah. So
I mean, you've already wowed us with the RDP and the ports and everything, but now let's wow the operations folks.
So I come from the operations world. So full disclosure, this is why I'm so passionate about automation and operations. I like people to have a good day, and I personally hate surprises.
Yeah?
So this is meant to be the system that doesn't give you surprises. From the patch management perspective, you can maintain, patch, operate your entire estate all from this one tool. And Patch Manager allows you to have different baselines for different tiers of your environment. So prod, UAT, staging, dev, they should probably not receive patching all at the same exact time.
Probably not, yeah.
You can automate that using this tool. Now,
I just want to add something. Now, if we're talking about SSM, we're looking at your screen and we can say, okay, this is SSM, one of the operations tools for our AWS workloads. But the whole point of what you're telling us is that this can span outside. I just want to reiterate, this is these managed instances that you were showing earlier. So what you're about to show us, patching, is not just your EC2 instances. This could be any one of these things, any public cloud, private cloud, on-prem, your Raspberry Pi, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. So this right here is a box in another provider.
Okay.
It's actually missing 2 patches. That's funny because I had patched it yesterday.
Oh, there we go.
And things move fast.
Well, it was Tuesday.
That's normal.
That's right. So out of view, I can see what is non-compliant in my environment. But if I want to go ahead and just patch everything, so again, maybe do with a little bit of caution if you're going to run this in a production environment. I'm going to choose to just scan, not necessarily scan and install on all of my hosts at this time.
Okay.
With one click, I can go ahead and patch everything. A note here first, while it's not something I'm going to show today, you can have a lifecycle hook that's built into this process. So if you have to deploy a complex application that should not be lit up until after the system has reached a certain baseline state.
Mm.
That can be enabled here. So you can have full lights out end-to-end deployment automation for your systems everywhere, not just in AWS.
Maybe like pre-warming an application
Yeah.
or spinning up a database and letting it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. You don't want to bring things down until everything's completely up, or you want to ensure that the state that you're expecting is actually consistent with expectations.
Right. Or you wouldn't want to put a web server online if it hasn't reached the minimum safe patch baseline.
Yep.
If an operating system is deployed with an unsafe version of a web server, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
So let's not do that. So this is actually going to run for a few minutes, and I'm going to come back to it. Meanwhile, it'll actually show a little progress while it goes, and it's going to come back with a couple of errors, and that's okay because I leave my environment a little broken. So I'm going to show a little bit of. Well, actually, we're already talking.
Look at that. Already.
Wow, actually, that happened really fast.
That was pretty fast.
That was very fast.
There we go.
Oh, it's going
we
more.
go.
Oh, it's moving too fast for me.
Oh,
Oh,
there
oh no.
Yeah, redemption. Redemption.
Oh, it is.
Hey,
oh
there
my
goes.
goodness.
Look at that.
There we go.
I'm never going to be able to leave this page now. It just keeps running too fast, you know?
I guess you could say we came full circle.
Oh,
I had to do it.
yes,
I had to do it. It was
yes.
there.
We
Yes.
will forgive you that one. That is okay. What I'm going to show while this finishes is a little bit of the logging that we captured while we are talking to those machines.
Okay.
Over, I'll just focus on the SSH logs for the
This is
moment.
the same group of machines you just sent the patch to.
Well, yes. So all of these machines that I've been talking about, I've logged into them earlier today, and I've put certain commands into the prompt so that I can query them here
Perfect.
on air.
You're saying we can query the history of logs to figure out who may have potentially erroneously put in a command, or figure out, hey, who was the one that went rmrf /star and brought down a 12 terabyte database that totally wasn't me that one time.
Yep. Who did sudo su?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff.
That is awesome. I'd love to see what this looks like.
So at a glance, I'm looking for every time I type Rich was here into the console. So a little bit of a silly example, but I think it gets the job done. Let's have a look at one of these.
Well, I mean, I understand you're simulating someone doing something. When was this person doing something? So
Yep.
So here we can see the runtime user. In this case, it was the SSM user. Again, configurable with the SSM agent.
Yep.
I said echo Rich was here. I actually did this on air about 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
And we see the results of the command as well. Now, this can get really interesting if we run a search for every time I ran things like ps or sudo. Then we're going to see a lot more results.
That is interesting and extremely handy.
All right. Well, okay, exit might not actually be the most interesting command for me to have typed, but it's
and
okay.
also, just to remind people, you're looking through various logs on various machines in one query, right? Not just one machine.
Yes.
So
And not just EC2 instances on their own.
Yes,
Compute
exactly.
wherever it lays.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
wherever all of these SSM agents are.
Yeah, very, very good. So about this, I had mentioned the KMS encryption part. When I first accessed these servers, there was this message that popped up at the top saying, this session is KMS encrypted. Very important to note that the role that I have created has access to the KMS key. The user that I'm using right now has access to the KMS key.
Okay.
And nobody else. So if we were to look at the log group here, you
Okay.
can see this KMS key right here, highly secured. Like everything else in CloudWatch, it has things like order awareness, and it is appropriate for use, and even highly regulated environments.
Very, very cool.
So let's have a look here. Oh, we're done.
Yay.
Awesome. And now if we want to see what failed, it's very easy for us to check. We can just pop over here. We can see the instances that failed. And we can see the exact reason why. One of these is going to say because it's an unsupported operating system, and that is okay. It's because this particular box is not actually set up for this, and that is all right.
Very cool. So I would suppose this could meet compliance requirements, help folks meet those requirements, and provide somebody like a PMO or a product owner to go through and say, hey, what did this last deployment do for us? How is this impacting us? Hey, that last Patch Tuesday sweep, what type of impact does this does? Be informed, take that data back to leadership and say, hey, this is what we've got. This is the plan we need to implement, and here's how we move forward. That's a pretty powerful tool just natively out of the box.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And I know you're showing some managed instances, and you purposely did one that was going to fail just to kind of show that. But typically, you would have a fleet of like-minded VMs
yes.
throughout. So, but it's just nice to see that the things that we've been learning about SSM within AWS pertains to things that SSM manages possibly outside of AWS.
Yes. Nothing that I'm going to show today is not applicable for Hybrid Cloud Edge.
So, gotta ask the $1 million question: how is it possible? How is it that you can load into SSM, do some commands, and somehow have access everywhere to be able to do the thing and then report back on it in a predictable and secure manner? Like, how is the sausage made in the background?
The SSM agent, to be clear, it's actually open source.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's written in Golang. You can find it on GitHub. It's the model that we use of having the agent-based side of controlling the hosts themselves, coupled with the control plane activities that are built with the full power of AWS, so to speak.
Okay.
But this has taken, you're looking at the result of years of very thoughtful, deliberate, careful improvement and iteration based on feedback from our customers. So Systems Manager launched, I think, more than 7 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah, and it's had a hybrid capabilities for many years as well. So we've had a lot of runtime experience with this.
It definitively shows.
Okay, so we've just been talking this whole time, for now, about SSM. What about if for some reason a customer needed to do this, or maybe manage VMs instances from different areas? Maybe for some reason they couldn't use SSM. What other options are there, or what other AWS services? Maybe not doing exactly what SSM does, but what other options do AWS customers have to manage things across various ecosystems?
All right. So I think one of the tools that's very useful in this regard is IAM roles anywhere.
Oh, it's another anywhere option.
Yes, there's a theme around anywhere options.
see
You
that.
probably caught up on that.
Yeah, so earlier you were talking with Rama about ECS anywhere and EKS anywhere. Now we have IAM roles anywhere.
That's right.
Awesome. Let's hear about it.
Yeah.
So we have this role here that is being assumed by these SSM agents. And you can see the permissions that I've given it. It has access to those KMS logs that I had earlier mentioned, very explicit access. I also have some access for X-Ray, which we'll get into in a little bit. A little more log group, some access to the SSM data plane itself. Now, wouldn't it be neat if you didn't even have to use the SSM agent in order to obtain this role?
That would be pretty cool.
So the tool for this, roles anywhere. For this, I'm going to pop over into this other server. Fantastic. Now, on this box, I've installed the AWS CLI, and I've configured a profile.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you that right now. It looks kind of interesting.
Just for our viewers, the AWS CLI is the command line interface.
Yes.
Making sure.
So if you've ever had ephemeral access tokens from AWS, they're impossible to read. But it's meant for machine to look at. It's not meant for humans to look at. These ephemeral tokens are actually created by the Systems Manager agent, and they're rotated periodically. They are persistent in the file system for a brief time, and you can use those as a way of accessing that role inside of AWS. And if you want to see what role you're actually using,
when you install the command line interface, you set up this credentials file, which is what you just catted earlier. And you can have different profiles, and we see there's two different profiles. The default, which is by default, and then this roles anywhere, just to kind of walk everyone through what you just showed.
So the role that I had shown in the console, it was called Demo SSM Hybrid Activation. And I'm using the Systems Manager mechanism to fetch that role. Great. But what if you don't want to use Systems Manager? What if you need something that serves another use case? This is where roles anywhere comes in. So there are no credentials for this role baked into this instance. What we actually have is a process whereby you use mutual TLS to show your identity to the IAM endpoint. and then it will
Interesting.
return credentials for you on demand. So what this lets you do is extend the AWS experience and extend our data and control planes all the way out to wherever you are on the edge. So you could have a machine running in another cloud environment. If it needs to access data from S3 using authentication, for example, very simple just to use this sort of process to very securely and very granularly grant access to that machine to perform those actions.
So, Rich, can you walk me through this? I'm a little lost on the authentication portion, because what you just described kind of sounds like what you'd use Cognito for. And maybe you log into an identity provider, and they kind of, as long as you're authorized there, we can assume this role. Maybe I missed it. I didn't see the authorization part of this rules anywhere.
So the authorization part here, it actually takes place using. So this is just a separate command. The credential helper here is a helper command that takes your private certificate that is on your server, wherever it is, and uses that to sign the request.
Gotcha. I see the cert icon there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a complex process that's based entirely around public certificate infrastructure. But it is also a fantastic way of truly understanding and asserting what machines are accessing your AWS resources.
That is pretty spectacular, I've got to say.
In this example, what exactly is getting this role? Is it a process, or is it the machine? Because you said earlier we're not installing the SSM agent, which previously that's what had the role, was the agent itself. So what is actually having the role here?
So what's having the role is going to be this credential helper command. And if you were to run this solo like I just did, it's going to return the same sort of information that you saw up here. So you have the session token, and that's going to have things like the expiration time built into it, plus, of course, the access key and the secret key. With this signing helper, it's going to fetch all of that same information, but it's just going to turn it as a JSON blob. So it just looks a little compressed. But it's the same data. The point is, it's ephemeral, and it is based on the mutual TLS approach.
Okay.
Yes. And then you can use these credentials for everything else that you would need to inside of AWS.
That's got to be one of the most innovative things that I've heard as far as how to simplify operations in quite some time. Rich, I got to say that's pretty slick.
It's pretty cool. So if people are looking for this in the console, you're going to go to roles, then you can go down to the bottom, and you can see roles anywhere right down here. And then from there, it's just a matter of setting up your trust anchor, having the certificate authority, signing a request, and then you can map that to a specific profile, more than one profile, and you can even assign session restrictions.
Interesting. How does that work?
So one of the really neat things about IAM is you can have a session policy that's assigned to an entity when they first assume a role. And that policy can be far more restrictive than maybe the role has by default. So perhaps if you have a role that for whatever reason, I won't go into the use cases too much.
Sure.
If it needs to be assumed with even less permissions than the role would default have, for whatever reason, maybe it has to do with a user who's doing pass-through authentication in some way. There's an option for you to be even more constrained with what they're allowed to do.
Gotta say, it's almost harkening back to sitting there at the command line in Etsy Shadows and in Etsy Pass to go through and further restrict what folks are doing just at an enormous scale, just about anywhere where the compute lies.
Yeah.
So I noticed you got something up about License Manager. This has got to be a very, very hot topic in your segment, in your patch.
Yes, absolutely. Do you see any use cases? What are you going to show us with licenses? How licenses across different cloud environments become complex. Everyone has different rules.
Yep.
Sometimes you have different rules for your on-premises. What can we do? License Manager is a way to help that within AWS, but sounds like you're going to give us some tips on how that can help with various different environments.
Yeah. So it piqued my interest when we were talking a little bit about inventory before, and you know, when I was doing the inventory, you know, automatically using the systems manager agent, I saw parts of it go flying by, and I said, I should probably go into license manager, and I can show you right here. I've just created for Docker and Nginx two. I don't have licensed versions of Docker and Nginx that I'm actually licensing. It's just for demo purposes. But I can track the usage of applications and their licenses across my entire estate. In this particular case, I'm only using 2. But look at that. There are these MI instances. So these are hybrid activated remote instances.
So how did you set this up? Like, what's it looking for? How does it know what to find?
So if you go into inventory search inside of License Manager, this actually pulls off the same data that exists inside of Systems Manager. It's built on top of it, where it's able to take advantage of you know, the very powerful inventory database that we build from all the machines that we interact with. If we look for application name equals, let's say Nginx. Just like that. I've found, yes, I'm running Nginx on my Raspberry Pi. I don't actually remember why. And I'm running on some Red Hat that happens to be inside of EC2.
That is pretty nuts. I'll just go out and say the first thing that came to mind, where you're not managing multiple CMDBs, you're not managing multiple spreadsheets, you're not managing, hey, who pulled a cal for this? Hey, who's got a per seat license for MS SQL? This just seems to go to the root of simplification to the nth degree. Just go pull the inventory. Here's your report. Anybody asks for it, here you go, off to the races.
Yeah,
that's it.
And if you want to, you can say, I have a certain number of licenses for Nginx. Let's say I have 10, and alert me when this happens to go above 10. Just so you're aware, it's not actually going to do any registration or anything, but it's just a tool to help you keep track of things.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. So for what do I have here? So for Nginx, I've said I have a limit of 8. I'm currently consuming 4. The resources in question, so I have 3 EC2 and the 1 Systems Manager 1. But what if, to your point, you wanted to be alerted proactively if you're coming near your license threshold? So all I need to do is take the Amazon resource name for this particular data point, for this graph that shows how much license I'm consuming. Then if I pop over to CloudWatch, we'll go to metrics, and we'll spend a little more time in CloudWatch in just a moment. Look at this. I have all of that data already here. I can turn it into numbers. Then let's go ahead and add that to a new dashboard. Can't have an exclamation mark. There we go. Perfect. So I have this data now visually, potentially in the face of whoever your operators are. And then
that looks exactly like what's running on some monitor that's on 24/7 at the top of
you know it.
Cubicle City. So
that's exactly it.
Cubicle City, you're in the middle of the fishbowl in the NOC, where you're just kind of sitting there with your head crooked, trying to figure out what's coming next.
That 50% has burned in to the display.
And I'd probably say that if you're spending your time staring at the unchanging data points like that, it might not be the best use of your time, which is why creating an alarm on this metric is exactly the thing to do.
Now, you could change the display, but still have that burn-in, but actually go look at things you might actually
You're just looking for the burn-in. As soon as you see burn-in, that's the alarm.
That borders on the everything's okay alarm. But so it was trivial for me to find this data, see how much license consumption we have. We could be alarmed proactively. And of course, we always suggest people plug into whatever ITSM tooling you have so that you can be as...
Well, that's a good point. You created this dashboard in like 15 seconds. Now, granted, the inventory had already run and you had found those the data points, but you just made a dashboard that quick.
Yeah, and I actually made another dashboard earlier today. This took me about 5 minutes-ish, I don't know. So this is actually VM running another cloud provider.
You know, that's interesting. In the upper left-hand dash, the memory used %.
Yes.
That's typically, that's a funny thing to measure because typically you don't get to see inside the OS, and that is a parameter that's being reported by the SSM agent.
Right. Well, no, sorry. This is actually being reported by the CloudWatch
CloudWatch agent. Yes, thank you.
That actually goes to the next point, and I'm going to progress here for a moment. Can we show the slide for a minute, please?
And that's something you learn as you're going through people learning AWS for the first time, the typical CloudWatch metrics, CPU and disk, but memory is the one that is the gotcha because that's inside the OS. That
and requires the custom metrics. You got to write the scripting. You go pull a snippet, and then you got to tweak it so it actually fits your use case.
Oh, I've been there. I like making things easy. I don't like making things hard.
Yeah.
So the way that this actually works is, you see on the left-hand side, we have the Systems Manager agent, and it has those credentials. And that was in the credential file that I showed a minute ago.
Yeah.
Those credentials are actually being used by the CloudWatch agent to interact with CloudWatch and Systems Manager and whatever else we want it to. So I actually have this same server. It's sending data into EventBridge. It's sending data into X-Ray, and I'll show that in just a minute as well. So it's a full participant in a distributed microservices application that I'm actually running. But that is based on this use of AWS credentials that comes from this particular case Systems Manager agent, but could also be using roles anywhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And now if we can go back to my screen, please.
Now, I heard you teasing X-Ray. Are we going to see X-Ray in action outside of AWS?
I can do that right now.
All right.
You got to be kidding. What aren't we going to cover today?
Now, just for our viewers, if you're not familiar with X-Ray, X-Ray is the service used to really trace services in a microservice type of architecture so you could see where the gotcha points are, which pieces might be lagging, or where the bottlenecks are.
Absolutely.
And so as we talk about monolithic versus microservices architecture, obviously part of the microservice architecture is to be, we say, the developers of that microservice can use any language they want. They can be anywhere. They can use any runtime. But now sounds like we're taking that a step further where it can run anywhere we want it to.
Without having to write kludgy scripts is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true. So I won't really show this application. I'll just say that, well, you can tell it by the bubbles, there's a lot going on here.
There is a lot going on there.
But what I'm going to highlight is, for simplicity, I call this node hybrid.
Okay.
So this hybrid node is a part of this app, and it is communicating to Systems Manager. It's communicating to an end client. It's communicating to EventBridge. And what we're going to do is, if we view the dashboard for this app, this happens to be using the X-Ray agent on the same host as running CloudWatch and Systems Manager. So it's well managed.
Using those same credentials?
Using those same credentials, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So here we can see the latency between that node and EventBridge.
Okay.
We can see the latency and the number of transactions per second between it and Systems Manager. And then if we want to do something really neat, there's no reason why we couldn't go ahead and have a look at the metrics coming off of this box.
No.
Yeah. And then we can create alarms on it.
Okay.
It's not even in AWS, but we have this telemetry coming from it. So we can collect telemetry in all kinds of different ways from remote systems. We can use open telemetry as another option. We also have services like Amazon Managed Grafana and Managed Prometheus, which can be part of the solution. But in this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm collecting just the raw number of requests per minute that this machine is making through the rest of my distributed application. And then just like everything else, we want to operationalize it. We want to have alarms if there are problems. And I can even use things like an anomaly detection band.
We're using CloudWatch anomaly detection for an instance that is not living in EC2, that is being aggregated by X-Ray.
That's it.
Where was this like 12 years ago?
Life is much better now in many ways.
I see. We were truly in the dark ages back then.
Now, the anomaly detection band here, it's not going to be a very accurate band because it does take some time for it to observe data and then be able to understand what good looks like. But nevertheless, this is it. I was able to go ahead and create an alarm, go on about my day, There we go. And then this will show up on, if I wanted to, on a dashboard, just like this one here. And I have some data points here that have been collecting for a number of days. So we want to look at, we see there's an alarm right now on the latency coming off of this application.
Okay.
So full disclosure, I actually have a fault injection process that's running on this box. So there are supposed to be errors.
Yep, that's good.
So this is a good thing.
That is a good thing.
Also gives me lots of red to talk about during demos.
But the cool thing is here is, despite a narrow subset of data, CloudWatch anomaly detection is able to parse through your logs, understand what your application is doing, and give you a min-max range to say, hey, anything above or below this threshold, you probably have a problem despite the fault injection.
That's right. That's right. And like what I usually tell customers is, it's not enough just to understand things like your memory consumption or your disk space. What you need to know is your business metrics. And there's no reason why you can't feed business metrics into this same system. So, for example, if you're expecting to have 100 sales per minute on a website, if suddenly you start seeing 50, that's a problem. Conversely, if you start seeing 200, maybe that's also another kind of problem. Maybe somebody didn't tell the operations team that there's a marketing campaign happening, and as a result, the environment's going to be more stressed than they were anticipating. I hope they've set up auto-scaling. It's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, well, the sales manager is not going to say, Rich, I want to make sure this process, this microservice, doesn't go above a certain millisecond response time. They are going to say, we are aiming to do 100 sales per hour or something like that. So I could see that.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it all comes down to the customer experience. Like you mentioned, if it drops out to 50, does the customer shopping on their phone? Do they see a pinwheel? Do they see like an hourglass spinning? Is it just constantly reloading and refreshing? You know, those are metrics that I guess up until now we haven't really taken into consideration. That's a pretty strong recommendation to be making to folks.
It is. I wonder if we can show this next slide for just a moment. I want to just briefly touch on connectivity options for CloudWatch. And the same rules actually apply for Systems Manager. Important that you don't have to go through the internet for all of this control plane activity. If you have Direct Connect, if you have a VPN, you can use tools like Private Link to route traffic through an entirely private channel. So depending on your requirements, depending on your needs, if your on-premises data center wants to communicate to AWS in a very secure, very private way that you control, you do have options, and they're readily available.
Yeah, even with a direct connect, a quick direct connect with a direct connect gateway to your closest POP with a private VIF allows you to have that all the public endpoints right there with your data traveling the least amount over the unsanitized internet as possible.
Yes. Yeah, the unsanitized internet, I think it's a good way of putting it. I hope we're going back to my desktop. I know we're running short on time. I want to show really quickly a little bit of compliance because I know this is super important for so many of our customers.
Well, you showed us logs earlier, but you use logs to make sure you're compliant with something usually. So how do those work together?
Yeah,
So,
because I'd imagine anybody that cares about compliance isn't going to go parsing through logs. They're not going to go tail. They just say, give me a report I can take to somebody.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And like they always say, if you can't demonstrate it to an auditor, then
It's an auto fail.
it's an auto fail. So you got to have the data. You have to be able to prove you're doing your due diligence. I want to just touch on this really quickly. Back on Systems Manager, there is this concept of state. In fact, there's a whole service in here called State Manager. And what it does is when you have an agent, it's going to say, you need to have this package installed of this version, and this process needs to be running. There's all these different criteria that you can define about the state of your system. And if you are non-compliant, we can report on it. So here we see I have thousands of rules, mostly related to patches, of course, because I'm running like 6 different operating systems. But you can at a glance view the compliance of the boxes in your environment. You can see which ones are good, which ones are not good, and then you can report on it. It's very, very powerful.
Well, you guys were talking about an auditor being on the other side of the table from an auditor. That day is dreadful, but it's the weeks leading up where you're collecting all the evidence for that auditor. And if you can help supplement that with reports, automatic reports, it makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah, the flip side of that is operating system licensing. Let's say your vendor is coming to town. Not only can we reliably and very, very succinctly say, hey, here's a list of everything that we have, and then take that output and speak with your auditing team and say, hey, look, here's all of our systems, here's our patch inventory, here's where compliance states, here's where our states lie. What other information do we do? And that could potentially, to your point, Jeff, cut down days, weeks, months of prep time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Rich, I loved everything you showed, and I just want to we've kind of rehashed this a few times, but let's say it again. Everything that you've just shown us can be performed on EC2 instances, VMs, personal machines, servers, hardware, bare metal servers in a data center, different cloud service provider, public, private clouds. I just wanted to it sounds like you're giving a demo of SSM, which you are, but X-ray and all these things. But the point of what you're telling us is that this can be all done on machines in various environments.
Yes, and that what AWS has created is not constrained just to EC2. So we meet customers where they are. So we have customers with very complex requirements. You know, some of them operate in very highly regulated industries. Some of them have operations at, you know, the far edge, as you were talking about before this. And those are complex use cases that require some out-of-the-box thing, or some in-the-box thinking, as the case may be. We have tools that meet you where you are and can help you solve these problems. And that was why I was really happy to be able to come here today and show some of this.
Yeah, it's a recurring motif about AWS meeting the customers as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you wanted to show us or potentially leave behind as a call to action or something for customers to go, think and noodle on as they continue to go down this journey?
So it's going to come down to the types of automation that you need to implement. So I like to think of automating yourself out of a job, right? It's aspirational. I've never done it. I haven't met anybody who says they've successfully done it. The takeaway is to look to our blog channels. Look for the content that we have that we've been publishing around hybrid and multi-cloud operations. You know, look to the content that also is very focused on the open standards and protocols, open telemetry. As a fantastic example, our other open source projects. So it's an open ecosystem. We are so grateful that customers entrust us with their data and their operations, and we just want to help wherever they are operating.
Sounds good. So, Rich, thank you very much for this great demo, hands-on demo. We were able to follow you through that. To that today. So, Adrian, what do you say we take a quick minute or two break? We'll come back, wrap up the day. We're at the end of the 2023 Hybrid Cloud and Edge Innovation Day. So stick with us. We'll be right back to wrap things up in about 1 to 2 minutes.